They say we stopped going to the moon because it wasn't worth the cost anymore. They say the public lost interest after the first few Apollo missions. They're lying. I know the truth, and it's been buried under decades of classified files, redacted documents, and threats whispered in the darkness. Most people believe the official story. I did too until last night, until I heard a voice I thought belonged to a dead man crackling through my old radio receiver. My name is Dr. John Reeves, and I was a communications engineer for NASA's Deep Space Division. I was one of the few people cleared for the black projects, the missions that didn't officially exist. I was there in 1978 when they sent Apollo 19 to the moon. I was there when things went catastrophically wrong, and I was there when they decided to bury the truth so deep that even death couldn't dig it up. I haven't spoken about it in 37 years. Not to my wife before she passed. Not to my children. Not to a single soul. The threats were clear: stay silent or else. But tonight, that silence has been shattered by a voice from beyond the grave. I'm sitting in my cabin in the Appalachian Mountains, a glass of bourbon warming in my weathered hands, when the shortwave radio crackles to life. The old radio has been gathering dust for decades, a relic of a time when I still believed I could escape my past by simply forgetting it. The equipment is ancient, its dials worn smooth, its wires a tangled mess. I'd set it up years ago, more out of habit than anything else. I certainly wasn't expecting to receive anything important. But then the static breaks apart, and through it comes a voice that freezes my blood solid. John. John, if you can hear me, please respond. This is Frank Miller. I'm still alive. I'm still here, and I need you to know the truth. My hands shake so violently I nearly drop the bourbon glass. Frank Miller, my best friend, my closest colleague, the man I'd watched them drag away from that Nevada desert facility in 1978. The man they told me had died in a training accident. The man who'd been my brother in everything but blood. I leaned toward the microphone, my voice cracking. Frank? My God, where are you? What? Listen, he cuts me off, his voice tight with urgency. There's not much time. They're monitoring all conventional frequencies, but this old channel bounces off the ionosphere in a way their equipment can't track. Not for long, anyway. John, I need you to remember Project Artemis. I need you to remember what we found up there. I need you to tell the world what really happened. I set down my glass with shaking hands. Frank, I don't understand. They said you were dead. They held a funeral. There was a casket. Empty, he says flatly. An empty casket buried in a cemetery that doesn't appear on any official maps. They were very thorough, John, very careful. But I've had a long time to think about this. 37 years down here in the darkness beneath the moon's surface. And I've decided you need to know. The world needs to know. My mind reels. Beneath the moon's surface? Frank, that's impossible. You couldn't. We're not alone, he interrupts, and I can hear something in his voice that chills me to the bone. A kind of hollow resignation, as if he's been rehearsing these words for decades, waiting for this moment. We never were. And when I tried to come back, when I tried to tell them what we'd found, they decided I knew too much. They decided I needed to disappear. But here's the thing about disappearing on the moon, John. You have to disappear completely or you become a ghost. And ghosts, well, ghosts can still communicate. I stand up, pacing around my small cabin like a caged animal. Every instinct tells me this is impossible, that I'm losing my mind, that the bourbon and the memories have finally caught up with me. But I know Frank's voice. I know it the way you know your own heartbeat. Tell me everything, I say. There's a pause filled only with static and what sounds like a mechanical hum in the background. When Frank speaks again, his words come slowly, deliberately, each one weighted with the terrible knowledge he's carried alone for nearly 4 decades. It started in 1978, he begins. They selected me for a mission they called Project Artemis. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, it was the most ambitious thing NASA had ever attempted. They told me it was a simple reconnaissance mission, a follow-up to Apollo 17 to collect some additional lunar samples and conduct geological surveys. Routine stuff, another flag-planting exercise. But I knew something was wrong from the moment I was briefed. How did you know? I ask. Because you were there, Frank says. You briefed me before launch, remember? You told me something your supervisor had said, something he said by accident when he didn't think you were listening. You told me they'd been picking up strange signals from the far side of the moon. Signals that didn't match anything in our databases. Signals that suggested activity. I do remember. God help me, I remember. I'd almost forgotten that night, had successfully buried it under years of forced amnesia and deliberate ignorance. But now it comes flooding back, the fear in my supervisor's voice, the way he'd grabbed my arm and told me to forget I'd ever heard anything, the cold clarity of understanding that something was very, very wrong. I remember, I whisper. When I got to the moon, Frank continues, everything seemed normal at first. Beautiful, actually. The Earth hanging in the black sky like a blue marble, the gray dust spreading out beneath the lunar module. It was peaceful. But then we started picking up the signals directly. Not radio signals. Something else. Something that seemed to be coming from inside the moon itself, from a location that we'd been specifically instructed to avoid in our flight path. What kind of signals? I ask. Intelligent signals, Frank says simply. Patterns. Rhythms. Almost like communications. Like something was trying to reach out to us. My mission commander, Colonel Hayes, he wanted to investigate. At first, Houston told us to maintain course, to ignore it. But then we got new orders. Direct orders from people I'd never heard of before. Orders to change course. Orders to approach the source of the signals. I can picture it all too clearly. The tension in the mission control room that I'd observed, the hushed conversations, the sudden appearance of men in dark suits with credentials I wasn't allowed to examine. The sense that something unprecedented was happening and we were barely holding it together. We descended to coordinates we hadn't been briefed on, Frank continues, and that's when we saw it. John, there was a structure there, massive, half buried in the lunar dust like it had been waiting for us, like it had been there for thousands of years. It wasn't made of anything we could identify. The surface was smooth, almost organic looking, reflecting the sunlight in a way that shouldn't have been possible given the angle. It was beautiful and terrifying. I can hear the awe in his voice, the way it trembles with the memory of it. What did you do? Hayes ordered us to approach it, Frank says. We had a specialist with us, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo. She was supposed to take samples, to analyze whatever we found. We suited up, we descended from the module, and we started walking toward this structure. The closer we got, the more details I could see. There were markings on it, symbols or text in a language I'd never seen before, and there was an opening, John. A dark mouth in the side of the structure, almost like an entrance. Frank's breathing has become audible now, rapid and shallow. We went inside. Hayes ordered us to go inside. The interior was massive, cathedral-like. The beam from our suit lights couldn't reach the ceiling, and there, in the center of a chamber, we found something, someone, a body. It had been there so long it was almost fossilized, but it was unmistakably a humanoid form. Tall, skeletal. Its eyes were sunken, its mouth frozen in what looked like a scream. And next to the body, there were more symbols. And Sarah, she recognized them. She'd seen similar markings in some underground structures on Earth. Places that shouldn't have been explored. Places that were supposed to remain sealed. What did the symbols mean? I ask, though part of me doesn't want to know. They were a warning, Frank says quietly. A warning in a language that shouldn't have existed, written thousands or maybe millions of years ago. Sarah tried to explain it, but before she could finish, everything started happening at once. The ground began to shake. The chamber started to glow with a faint bioluminescence. And then we heard it, a sound like nothing I've ever heard before or since. A voice, John. A voice that wasn't a voice. It came from everywhere and nowhere. From the structure itself. From the moon itself. What did it say? I whisper. It said, "You should not have awakened us," Frank replies, and his voice has become barely audible, like a man reliving his worst nightmare. That's what the symbols meant. That's what the body was. It was a warning, a trap. They'd been waiting for us to reach a certain level of technological advancement, waiting for us to return to the moon, waiting to see if we would understand the message they'd left behind. And when we didn't understand, when we tried to take samples, to study the body, to explore further, we activated something. We woke something up. I gripped the edge of my desk to steady myself. What happened next? The structure came alive, Frank says, and now I can hear genuine fear in his voice, the raw terror of a man reliving the moment his life changed forever. Lights started flashing. Systems inside the structure powered up. We ran, John. We ran back to the module as fast as we could in our suits, but we weren't fast enough. Behind us, the structure opened up. More openings appeared, and things started coming out of them. I don't know what to call them. Shadows, maybe. Forms that didn't quite have shape, that moved in ways that shouldn't be possible. They weren't attacking us, not exactly, but they were pursuing us, like they wanted to stop us from leaving. Did you make it back? I ask, though I already know the answer must be complicated, or Frank wouldn't be telling me this story from beyond the grave. The module, Frank says. We reached the module. Hayes got the engine started, but one of the creatures, one of the forms, it reached the landing pad as we were lifting off. It grabbed hold of the strut, and for a moment, just a brief moment, I saw it. Really saw it. It wasn't a creature at all. It was a person, a woman, ancient, wearing something that might have been a suit. Her face was anguished, desperate. She was trying to tell us something. But then we lifted off and she fell away into the lunar dust, and we were gone. Frank goes quiet for a long moment. I can hear only the faint hum of whatever equipment he's using to transmit this impossible message. We made it back to Earth, he continues finally. We rendezvoused with the command module, and we came home. But when we landed, we were taken immediately. Before we could speak to anyone, before we could contaminate the official narrative, men in suits came aboard and took us into isolation. Sarah disappeared first. I never saw her again after that first night in debriefing. Colonel Hayes tried to make a deal with them to keep the information quiet in exchange for protection. They killed him in his sleep, made it look like a heart attack. And you? I ask. They were going to disappear me too, Frank says. But then something happened. A glitch in their systems, an opportunity. I had access to one of their secure facilities, a place where they were storing the samples we'd retrieved from the moon, pieces of the structure, pieces of the being we'd found, and I made a choice. I decided not to disappear. I decided to hide. I stole one of their experimental suits, the kind designed for long-term lunar operation, unregistered, off the books, and I sent a false signal indicating that I died in a shuttle accident. They believed it, and then I arranged a way to stay hidden on the moon itself. I can barely process what he's saying. You went back? You went back to the moon? I had to, Frank says, and there's an almost peaceful resignation in his voice now. I couldn't live here knowing what I knew, knowing that they'd buried the truth, knowing that something was waiting out there in the dark. So I went back. I've built a facility, hidden on the far side, powered by a reactor they didn't even know existed. I've spent the last 37 years monitoring the structure, studying the data we collected, trying to understand what we encountered. And John, what I've discovered is far worse than anything they feared. What? I ask, though I'm not sure I want to know. The creature we saw, Frank says slowly, the thing that grabbed our landing strut, it wasn't the only one. There are more, many more. They're dormant, in stasis, scattered across the moon's surface and beneath it. And they're not here to harm us. They're not invaders. They're refugees. They're the last remnants of a civilization that was old when humans first learned to make fire. They came to the moon thousands of years ago, fleeing something worse than themselves. The implications of what he's saying start to crystallize in my mind. Fleeing what? That's what I don't know, Frank admits. That's what keeps me awake in this little underground facility, staring at data that doesn't quite make sense. But I have a theory. I think they were running from something that was chasing them, something that followed them here. And I think it's still out there. I think they left warnings about it. I think that dead body, that fossilized figure we found, I think it was a sentinel, a guardian left behind to keep watch. And when we disturbed the structure, when we touched the body, we triggered something. We sent a signal. A signal to what? I whisper. Before Frank can answer, something changes in the transmission. The background hum becomes louder, more frantic. Frank's breathing accelerates. They're here, he says suddenly, his voice tight with panic. John, they found me. I don't know how, but they've located my facility. I can see movement on the external sensors. Multiple objects approaching from the eastern ridge. They're coming for me. Frank, you need to get out of there. There's nowhere to go, he says, and his voice is strangely calm now, accepting. I've always known this day would come. I've always known they wouldn't let me live forever, not after what I know. But listen to me, John. Listen carefully. I'm uploading everything. All my research, all the data, all the recordings of the signals we've been receiving from the structure. I'm sending it all to a dead drop you can access. Your old office at NASA headquarters, the loose panel in the air vent behind your desk. There's a key tape there. It opens a storage unit in Arlington. Everything is there. Frank, you need to get to it before they get to you, Frank interrupts urgently. And you need to tell people, John. You need to tell them what really happened. You need to tell them that we're not alone. You need to tell them that there's something else out there. Something far older and far more powerful than we can imagine. And you need to tell them that we made a mistake going back to the moon. We should have let the dead sleep. The sound in the background becomes louder, a kind of wailing mechanical noise mixed with something almost organic. I hear Frank gasp. They're at the outer door, he breathes. I can see them through the camera feeds. They're not what I expected. They don't look hostile. They look sad. They look like they're mourning, like they're sorry about something. Frank, tell them I'm sorry too, Frank says, his voice barely audible now. Tell them I tried to do the right thing. Tell them. The transmission cuts out abruptly, leaving only static. I try frantically to reestablish contact, adjusting frequencies, sending urgent calls into the darkness. But there's nothing, only silence. The kind of silence that has weight, that presses down on you like the darkness of space itself. I sit there for hours holding the microphone, unable to move, unable to think. Then just as dawn breaks over the mountains outside my cabin, the radio crackles to life one more time. But it's not Frank's voice that comes through. It's something else. Something that sounds like wind across an alien landscape, like the echo of distant machinery, like the sound of an ocean that has no water. And it speaks in English, though each word seems to arrive from somewhere impossibly far away. Dr. Reeves, we know what you know. We know what Frank told you. We have been patient for 37 years, but patience has limits. You have 3 days to decide. Speak the truth and face the consequences, or stay silent and join your friend in the darkness. We will be watching. We are always watching. And then nothing but static again. I know my days are numbered, but I couldn't live with the silence anymore. So I made a choice. I arranged to be sent back to the moon. It took months of planning, blackmail, and forged credentials to convince the Black Ops Division I needed to return on the moon for classified research. They were suspicious, but they wanted me where they could monitor me. Remote, isolated, no escape. I'm here now. In a pressurized module 37 kilometers from the structure. I've been here 12 hours. The structure is real. The signals are real. And something is awake. I set up the live stream with smuggled equipment, routing it through a satellite relay they can't easily intercept. Not for long anyway. The camera points through the module's window at the lunar surface. Gray dust, burning stars, and in the distance the structure, vast and impossible, half buried in ancient dust. I activate the stream. Within seconds, people tune in. Hundreds, thousands. My name is Dr. John Reeves. I'm broadcasting from the moon, right now. What you're about to see will change everything. The view counter climbs. 5,000, 50,000. Comments flood in. 45 years ago, a secret mission called Project Artemis discovered something. Something that's been waiting for millions of years. The government covered it up. They murdered to keep it secret. But tonight, the truth ends. I point the camera toward the structure, a geometric form, almost organic, reflecting starlight in impossible ways, ancient symbols carved across it. This predates human civilization by millions of years. When we discovered it in 1978, we woke something up. I describe what Frank told me. The dead body inside, the skeletal humanoid, the symbols, the shadow creatures, the desperate escape. They killed Dr. Sarah and Colonel Richard Hayes. They left Frank Miller to die, all to keep this secret. The view count passes 5 million. News networks pick up the signal. Governments scramble. 6 hours ago, the structure opened. I can see something inside. Movement. I zoom in. Something crystalline appears. Geometric, but alive. Like a living equation made of light and angles. It's beautiful, I whisper. Scientists demand data. Military officials scramble. But the signal is out. The world is watching. Whatever's inside isn't hostile. It's been trying to communicate. They're not here to harm us. Movement inside the structure increases. Crystalline forms become visible, moving toward the opening, toward my module, toward me. I'm not afraid, I say. I spent 45 years being afraid, but I'm not anymore. We're not meant to be alone. We never were. The lights flicker. My suit's systems go haywire. Instruments spin wildly, but the camera keeps broadcasting. I can see shapes moving across the lunar surface. Shadows, forms converging on my position. They're here, I breathe, but it's okay. I think they just want to talk. The module shudders. Something impacts the outer wall gently, like fingers tapping glass. The crystalline forms are right outside. Magnificent, terrible and magnificent. Millions of people have already seen this. You can't unknow it. You can't go back. The outer hatch begins to move. Opening. The vacuum will kill me in seconds. But the camera keeps broadcasting. We are not alone. We have never been alone. And now we finally understand why. The crystalline forms move closer. Their light becomes blinding. The feed pixelates, overwhelmed by luminescence. And then I see it. Something vast. Something that had been hidden on the far side. Something rising. A shadow crossing the lunar surface with terrible purpose. A massive shadow. Larger than anything that should be possible. Moving against the starlight like a living eclipse. The transmission glitches violently. The image fractures into cascading colors. And through the distortion, I hear something. A voice. Not human, not quite mechanical, ancient and patient. We have waited so long, the voice says, resonating through every frequency. We have sent our signals across the void. We have left our warnings. And now, finally, one of you has listened. One of you has come to meet us face to face. The image clears briefly. I can see myself in the module, the hatch fully open, the void surrounding me. But I'm not dead. The crystalline forms surround me, not attacking, almost cradling me, like they're welcoming me, like I'm finally home. The shadow you see rising is not a threat. It is an invitation, a doorway, the beginning of understanding. Your governments have feared us, but we have never meant harm. We simply needed someone brave enough to listen. The camera shows the massive shadow now fully visible against the stars. Moving away from the moon's surface, moving toward Earth, with purpose and intention. The time of hiding is over. The time of secrets is finished. Humanity will have to choose, remain in ignorance, or take the next step into a universe far stranger and far more wondrous than you ever imagined. The transmission cuts out. For a moment, there's only static, dead air. The view count freezes at 847 million. Nearly a billion people watched. Then the signal cuts back in one final time, but it's not from my helmet camera. It switched to an external camera, one mounted on the lunar observation station orbiting above. The view shows the moon's surface from above, gray and desolate. My module is visible, a tiny speck on the vast lunar plain. The hatch is open. There's no sign of me inside. But that's not what makes the world hold its breath. Moving across the lunar surface, casting an impossible shadow against the starlight, is something vast, something that dwarfs mountains, something that had been hidden on the far side of the moon, buried beneath ancient dust and rock. A shape, geometric yet organic, crystalline yet alive, rising from the surface like a leviathan emerging from an ocean. Its shadow stretches across hundreds of kilometers of lunar terrain, moving with terrible purpose. The shadow is heading toward Earth. The screen goes black. The live stream ends. But the message remains, echoing across every network, every frequency, every screen on Earth. We are not alone, we never were. And now the truth has finally set us free. Around the world, governments scramble, military forces mobilize, scientists demand explanations, religious institutions grapple with theological implications. But it's too late. Humanity knows. And somewhere in the darkness between worlds, something vast, impatient, and impossibly old begins its journey. Not to invade, not to conquer, but to finally, after millions of years of solitude, meet its younger cousins among the stars. The question is no longer whether we are alone. The question is, what will we do now that we know we never were?